Ground Zero, Chapter 3. Brandon, Windows on the World. Brandon loved riding the express elevator that zipped up all 107 floors of the North Tower without stopping. It was a kind of magic. 1 minute you're on the ground, and the next you're more than 1,000 feet up in the sky. Brandon watched with anticipation as the red digital numbers above the door flew by. 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106. And then, ding, they were there. On 107th floor, Windows on the World. The restaurant took up the entire floor, and diners were already scattered at different tables for breakfast. Miss Ang, the woman who managed the seating area, greeted Brandon as he entered, but he ran straight for the windows that gave the famous restaurant its name. The sky was still brilliant blue and cloudless, and Brandon could see far across the Hudson River, all the way into New Jersey. Huge container ships in the harbor looked like toy boats from up here. A news helicopter flew by underneath him. Brandon's skin tingled as he felt dizzy as his brain struggled to reconcile standing up so high with being safe behind the glass. Every part of him seemed to be screaming, "You can't possibly be up this high." But he was. For this brief, wonderful moment, he felt like the king of the world, or at least of New York and New Jersey. "All right, Brandon, if you have to be here, I'm going to put you to work," his father called. "Take a water pitcher and fill the flower vases on all the empty tables." Brandon rolled his eyes, but he didn't complain. He started with the tables on the other side of the restaurant, where he could get a peek at more amazing views. Right next door was the gargantuan World Trade Center South Tower. It was a twin of the North Tower, except it had an observation deck at the top instead of a restaurant, and no antenna. Its windows, like the North Tower's, were particularly obscured with thin aluminum supports. Beyond the South Tower, far off in the distance, was the Statue of Liberty. From this height, just a speck on an island in New York Harbor. Brandon finished filling the vases and headed for the eastern side of the restaurant, which offered picture postcard views of the Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges. Brandon had been down there less than half an hour ago, looking up at the Twin Towers from the Q train. "I think I can see my house from here," Brandon thought. Crash! A loud noise from the other side of the restaurant made Brandon flinch. An alarm went off and someone yelled, "Help! Fire!" Diners stood up from their tables, wondering what to do. Brandon set his pitcher down, suddenly afraid. The commotion was coming from the kitchen, where his dad was. "I'm sure it's nothing," Miss Ang told the diners. "No need to panic." Brandon ran to the kitchen and stopped at the door. A great towering flame burned on one of the stovetops, licking the ceiling. Brandon could feel the heat through his clothes. The kitchen floor was littered with broken dishes and food, and cooks and servers stood back from the fire in fear. Brandon's dad was there, but he wasn't hurt. He wasn't afraid of the fire either. "What are you all standing around for?" Brandon's dad said. He grabbed a towel and started to beat out the flames. Brandon relaxed. He had seen kitchen fires before. They were always spectacular, but ultimately not very dangerous. Grease would catch fire on a stove and burn hot and bright, and within a half a minute someone would put it out by throwing a pot lid on top or smothering it with a towel. Ordinarily, Brandon would have stayed to watch, but this, he realized, was the perfect distraction for him to slip away down to the underground mall and buy the replacement Wolverine gloves for Cedric. He patted his pocket again, feeling the lump of bills and coins. Getting the mess in the kitchen cleaned up would keep his dad busy for a while, and Brandon could go down to Sam Goody and back before his dad even knew he was gone. Brandon hurried past Miss Ang, who was still reassuring the diners, and over to the elevators. He pressed the down button and looked over his shoulder nervously, hoping his dad wouldn't come out of the kitchen and see him. The elevator door opened. It wasn't the express elevator that went straight back down to the lobby. This one only went to the sky lobby on the 78th floor. From there, Brandon would have to take 2 more elevators to get downstairs. It wouldn't be fast, but Brandon didn't want to wait around for someone to spot him. Brandon jumped into the elevator, just missing the closing doors. He'd made it. Brandon leaned against the railing of the back of the elevator and smiled. He couldn't fix punching Stuart Pendleton in the nose, but he could fix breaking Cedric's Wolverine gloves, and that made him feel better. The elevator slowed to a stop, and an elderly white man with silver hair got on. The elevator stopped again, and a blonde white woman in a purple pantsuit got on, followed by a big white guy in a blue blazer and a red necktie. "I shouldn't have taken the local," Brandon thought. He glanced at his Lego watch, 8:45 a.m. He was going to have to be speedy if he didn't want his dad to find out he was gone. The elevator stopped again, and a man with brown skin and a graying beard wheeled a catering cart with empty dishes onto the elevator. He wore a light blue turban that matched the color of the Windows of the World uniform. Brandon froze. The man wore a name tag that said Shavinda. Brandon didn't recognize him, but he worried Shavinda might have seen Brandon around the restaurant and would know he was Leo Chavez's son. Brandon slipped farther behind the big white guy and watched the red digital numbers on the floor tick by. 94, 93, 92, 91, 90, 89, 88, 87, 86, boom! Something boomed above them, and the elevator suddenly went sideways. Brandon grabbed onto the handrail to not fall over. Two other passengers, the blonde woman and the old man, did fall down, but Brandon couldn't have helped them even if he tried. The elevator was shuddering so wildly it felt like someone had taken him by the shoulders and was shaking the life out of him. And then a new sensation. They were falling. No, the elevator car wasn't falling, it was leaning, farther and farther and farther to the side, like they were on the tilt-a-whirl at Coney Island. Brandon held tight onto the handrail, digging in his heels, while the other passengers slid forward until they were all pinned to the opposite wall. The serving cart toppled over, spilling dishes and water and silverware. Brandon's mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. The elevator couldn't swing this far in the elevator shaft. Elevator shafts were just a little bigger than the elevators inside them. That meant the whole tower was leaning. All 107 floors? That wasn't possible, was it? The elevator stopped tilting and Brandon held his breath. No one uttered a word. Then slowly, sickeningly, popping and complaining the whole way, the elevator began to right itself. It came up straight and Brandon caught his breath, but then the elevator swayed in the other direction. The passengers who'd been pinned to the wall scrambled to cling to the railing to stay put. Brandon closed his eyes and braced himself as the silverware and broken plates came skittering across the floor toward him. But the elevator didn't swing so far this time. It shuddered and groaned its way back upright. The lights flickered but stayed on, and suddenly everything was quiet again. "What the hell?" the silver-haired man started to say, and then the elevator began to slide. Chapter 4, Rashmina, a clean slate. Rashmina and her brother ran up the steps of their village, Rashmina's thoughts racing faster than her feet. Americans were here. Rashmina had encountered Afghan National Army soldiers before. They had a base nearby and checked in occasionally with the village elders. The Americans were a different story. Rashmina had seen their helicopters flying over the valley, heard the pops and booms from their far-off gunfights with the Taliban, but in her 11 years, the Americans hadn't once come to her remote little village. Why were they here now? Like most other villages in the province, Rashmina was built into the side of a mountain. Flat land for the farming was scarce, so houses were stacked one on top of the other, like a pyramid of square pieces of sweetbread. To get from the bottom to their house near the top, Rashmina and her brother had to climb a long set of switchback stairs cut into rock. Rashmina and Pasoon turned a corner and saw a group of ANA soldiers just ahead. They looked very young, almost like teenagers. Boy men, Rashmina thought, like Darwesh and Aman, Pasoon's friends. Two of the soldiers held an old man named Azatullah outside of his home, while other soldiers went inside. "They're searching all the houses," Rashmina whispered. "But what are they looking for?" Azatullah started to argue with the soldiers, and Pasoon took Rashmina by the hand and pulled her along past them, up the stairs. At the house just below theirs, Rashmina saw an American soldier giving instructions to a team of Afghan soldiers. The American's uniform was sand-colored, unlike the green camouflage the ANA soldiers wore. He had more equipment too, and a bigger gun. Rashmina pulled her headscarf over her face and looked away as she and Pasoon slipped by. "Did you see that?" Pasoon hissed. "Afghans taking orders from an American in our own country?" They came at last to their house, a squat square home made of mud and brick and wood. Pasoon threw open the door and Rashmina followed him inside. There were only 3 rooms in their house, a front room where the family ate their meals, a room beyond that where the women spent most of their time, and where the family slept, and their tiny kitchen in the back with its cooking pit. Each room had a dirt floor with rugs on it, but no other furniture. Rashmina ran to the woman's room. Her older sister Marzia sat on the floor picking the bad bits out of the bowl of uncooked rice, and their Anna, their grandmother, did needlework and sang softly to Rashmina's little brother, Zahir, who rolled around on the rug beside her. Marzia looked pretty in her pink dress and teal headscarf. Anna wore a blue and white flower print dress and a blue shawl. "The Afghan army is here," Rashmina cried. "They're searching everyone's homes." Marzia stood up. "What? Why?" "It's the Americans. They're the ones in charge," Pasoon said. "They don't need a reason." Rashmina's father came into the room on his wooden crutch. The rugged mountains of southern Afghanistan had stolen years from their Baba, carving the lines and wrinkles of an older man into his reddish-brown face. His beard was short and bushy, more gray now than black, and he wore baggy pants, a long olive-green tunic, and a gray turban. Someone pounded on their door. Boom, boom, boom. Rashmina's Moore, her mother, hurried out of the kitchen. Moore was clutching a gray scarf around her face. "What is it? Who's come?" she asked. "The army," Baba told her. "I will speak to them." Pasoon followed, Baba to the front door, while Rashmina waited nervously with the rest of her family in the woman's room. A few minutes later, Rashmina heard the soldiers enter her home and began to search the family room. She could tell that Baba had come inside with them, but not Pasoon. Rashmina couldn't make herself stop shaking. What did the soldiers want? She and her family had nothing to hide. Marzia took her hand and squeezed it, and Rashmina knew her older sister was frightened too. Baba led the Afghan soldiers into the women's room. The American soldier Rashmina had passed on the stairs was with them. He had brown skin and was short with wide shoulders. "Baba, where's Pasoon?" Rashmina asked her father. They're keeping him outside, Baba said. Anand continued to do her needlework, unperturbed, but Rashmina's mother snatched up little Zahar and pulled Rashmina and Marzia to her like the soldiers had come to take them all away from her. Tell them we're not here to hurt them, the American soldier said in English. Despite her fear, Rashmina felt a small thrill go through her. Her English lessons had paid off. She understood what he said. The soldiers are not here to hurt you, someone said in Pashto. And Rashmina's jaw dropped as she saw the translator step out from behind the American. The translator wore tan camouflage pants, tan body armor over a black long-sleeve shirt, and a green headscarf. The translator was an Afghan woman. The Americans were told that there is a cache of Taliban weapons in this village. The translator told Rashmina and her family in Pashto. The Afghan National Army is here to search your house. The American sergeant is here as an advisor. There are no weapons here, Anand said to the translator. No Taliban either. Rashmina was barely listening. All she could do was stare wide-eyed at the translator. All the Afghan women Rashmina knew were mothers, wives, and daughters. None of them had jobs outside the home, and especially not important jobs like a translator, where they worked and talked with men outside their families. Who are you? Rashmina whispered to the translator. The woman smiled. My name is Miriam. I'm from Kabul. Rashmina couldn't believe it. It was like a whole new path had appeared before her that she hadn't known was there before. A whole new person she could become. Miriam. The two Afghan soldiers searched the woman's room, and then the American soldiers sent them to search in the kitchen and the goat pens. The American certainly acted like he was in charge, just as Bassoon had said. Rashmina studied the American again. This time she noticed a silly-looking stuffed animal tucked into the gear of his vest. The doll was all mouth and tongue, and long spindly arms and legs, and it had a wild, mischievous look in its eyes. It was shabby and faded and dusty like everything else in Afghanistan, and it was coming apart at one of the seams. Rashmina frowned. Why would the American be carrying something as strange as that, and what did it mean? One of the Afghan soldiers came back into the room with a small object in his hand. Rashmina recognized it immediately. It was a toy airplane their sister Hila had bought Bassoon as a gift 2 years ago. Now that Hila was gone, that plane was Bassoon's most treasured possession in the world. I found this in a hole high up on the back wall of the house, the soldier said in Pashto to Miriam, who translated for the American soldier. The American took the toy and returned to Rashmina's families. Why was this hidden? Miriam translated, and Anand laughed. It's my grandson's. He's a boy. He hides things. Rashmina nodded. Anand was right. Why should the soldiers care what Bassoon did with the little airplane? It was none of their business. It's only a toy, Baba told the Afghan soldier. The American frowned and handed the airplane to Baba. Tell him not to hide things from us, he told Miriam in English. It makes them look suspicious. The soldiers finished searching the house, and Baba escorted them and the American and Miriam back to the front door. Rashmina pulled away from her mother and followed them. More hissed, but Rashmina ignored her. She wanted to watch Miriam, hear her. Miriam and the American soldiers stopped outside the house to speak to Baba. Rashmina saw that Bassoon was there too, flanked by the 2 other ANA soldiers. Bassoon was scowling. His fists were clenched tight, and his arms were straight down at his sides. Rashmina could tell that he was ready to fight. The sergeant says he appreciates your cooperation, Miriam said to Baba and Bassoon, gesturing to the American. He hopes we can put the past behind us and start over with a clean slate. A clean slate? Baba asked. When they force their way into our homes? When they kill our people? They killed my sister Hila, Bassoon cried, glaring at the American. He turned to the Afghan soldiers. And now you betray your own country by working for them, he snapped. Rashmina's father put a hand over Bassoon's shoulder to calm him, but Bassoon shook him off. This past they speak of is our present, Baba told Miriam. Are we supposed to forget about our mothers and fathers, our sons and daughters, our brothers and sisters the Americans have killed in their attacks? If someone came along and killed a village of their people, would they say, well, time to start over with a clean slate, or would they swear revenge and promise to never forget? Rashmina wanted to cry. She hated the idea of revenge, but she too could never forget how the Americans had killed her sister. Sometimes she wished they could hurt as much as she did, just so that they'd understand. Miriam translated everything for the American soldier, expressing all their sorrow and frustration in English. Tell them not to let the Taliban into their village, and we'll leave them alone. The American said, Not let the Taliban in, Rashmina cried in English. Not waiting for Miriam to translate into Pashto, Baba and Bassoon couldn't understand her words, but they looked surprised when she was speaking up. How can we stop the Taliban when you won't let us have weapons? Rashmina asked. You always have a choice, the American told her. You can pick our side or their side. That's no choice at all, Miriam told the sergeant. If these villagers side with the Americans, the Taliban will kill them. If they side with the Taliban, you and the ANA will kill them. You're telling them to choose death. I'm sorry, the sergeant said with a shrug. He moved on to the next house up the stairs, and the ANA soldiers followed him. Miriam took a deep breath and looked at Rashmina. I'm sorry too, she said, and she left to join the soldiers. What was all that about? Bassoon asked Rashmina. The last part of the conversation had all been in English. Nothing, Rashmina said. Telling him would just make him angrier. I hate them, Passoon said, and he spat on the ground. Baba went back inside the house, and Rashmina started up the stairs. Wait, where are you going? Passoon asked her. I'm following that translator, Rashmina said. No, you can't, said Passoon. He grabbed her arm and glanced over his shoulder. Passoon, what are you doing? Her brother was suddenly acting very strange. Nothing, he said. You just need to get your chores done. Come on, I'll help you sweep the floor. Rashmina knew something was up. Passoon never offered to help with her chores. She pulled herself free. Passoon, what is going on? Passoon looked around wearily, then pulled Rashmina into a shadow on the stairs. It's the Taliban, he whispered. They started a rumor there were weapons in our village to lure the soldiers here. Darwesh and Aman told me yesterday. It's a trap, Rashmina. The Taliban are going to attack the soldiers on their way out of the village.